It's Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024. It's been a minute, and boy, howdy, do we have a lot to talk about. Next on the AM Update. Well, it's good to be back after a few days of vacation. Thanks for letting me get away with taking a few days off from the pod. Your boy needs a break every now and again. Of course, this was Labor Day weekend ahead of a presidential election, a meaningful presidential election, perhaps the last meaningful presidential election should it go a particular direction. And being that it is Labor Day now, we are coming in hot and heavy, approaching the 2024 November presidential elections. Between now and then, there's going to be a lot of coverage of the election on this podcast and everywhere else. If you like my particular spin on the day's news, I'd covet your reviews on whatever podcast platform you listen on, and if you could, tell as many people as you can about this morning news update. I appreciate those. Like I said, it was a very busy weekend, and perhaps the biggest news of all was that the Democrat media industrial complex, all of last week, formulated another hoax against Donald Trump, this time having to do with his paying of respects to the 13 fallen service members at Arlington National Cemetery last week on the third anniversary of the botched pullout from Afghanistan. That was the bombing of Abbey Gate at the Kabul airport. Donald Trump visited Arlington National Cemetery, as many dignitaries and many leaders have over the years. He posed for photographs with families of fallen soldiers. It's really typical stuff, but the Democrats and the media, and sorry for the redundancy, they tried to turn that into a scandal, saying that Donald Trump disrespected the sacred grounds of Arlington. Over the weekend, Democrat presidential nominee Kamala Harris said this on X, quote, "As vice president, I have had the privilege of visiting Arlington National Cemetery several times. It's a solemn place, a place where we come together to honor American heroes who have made the ultimate sacrifice in honor of this nation. It is not a place for politics." And yet, as was reported this week, Donald Trump's team chose to film a video there, resulting in an altercation with cemetery staff. Let me be clear, the former president disrespected the sacred ground, all for the sake of a political stunt. So that was the stunt that the media and the Democrats were trying to pull last week, just conjuring a controversy, conjuring a scandal when it involves Donald Trump. There's nothing wrong about what Donald Trump did there. He went to Arlington National Cemetery, which is more than Kamala Harris and Joe Biden can say for themselves, to honor the 13 fallen service members of the botched pullout from Afghanistan, which, of course, the Biden-Harris administration is responsible for. And like I said, this was all just a conjured stunt, as you've seen on many occasions with Donald Trump, to paint him in a bad light. And it became clear by the middle of the week that the Democrats' plan was for the weekend, Labor Day weekend, to make this the issue heading into that weekend. Make another scandal involving Donald Trump, another scandal involving service members in our nation's military to be the topic du jour heading into the long Labor Day weekend ahead of the November election, except that blew up in their face. Why? Because Donald Trump has the Gold Star family members on his side, as he expertly pointed out over the weekend. Over the weekend, the Trump campaign released video statements from the families of those slain service members. Darren Hoover, Gold Star father of Staff Sergeant Taylor Hoover, was on video lambasting the Biden-Harris administration. Herman Lopez, Gold Star father of Corporal Hunter Lopez, was also in on this. Christy Shamblin, Gold Star mother-in-law of Sergeant Nicole Gee, was in on this. Jim McCollum, Gold Star father of Lance Corporal Riley McCollum, was in on this. Steve Nikui, Gold Star father of Lance Corporal Kareem M. Nikui, was in on this. Coral Doolittle, Gold Star mother of Corporal Humberto A. Sanchez, was also lambasting the Biden-Harris administration. Jacqueline Schmitz, Gold Star mother of Lance Corporal Jared Schmitz, released a video statement. Mark Schmitz, Gold Star father of Lance Corporal Jared Schmitz, was in on this as well. 8 Gold Star family members lampooning the Kamala Harris administration, because that's, for all intents and purposes, what it is right now. Lampooning her for having the gall to accuse Trump of not respecting service members of the United States of America. Put all together, those statements sounded like this.
Vice President Harris.
Vice President Harris.
Vice President Harris, my name is Steve Nikui. I'm the father of Lance Corporal Kareem M. Nikui.
My name is Jim McCollum. I am the Gold Star father of United States Marine Corps Lance Corporal Riley McCollum.
This is Mark Schmitz, Gold Star father of Marine Lance Corporal Jared Schmitz.
My name is Darren Hoover. and I'm the Gold Star father of United States Marine Corps Staff Sergeant Taylor Hoover.
My daughter-in-law, Sergeant Nicole Leanne G., was killed in the Afghanistan exit at Abbey Gate.
Our kids were murdered because of your administration.
You were not at Dover for the dignified transfer. And no time have you reached out to me to offer your condolences, to offer thank you for Kareem's sacrifice and service.
You have 13 families who have been waiting over 3 years to so much as get a phone call, to so much as hear our kids' names said aloud.
You failed for 3 years and 8 months to acknowledge our kids.
Where were you and Joe Biden on August 26, 2024? Nowhere near Arlington Cemetery. You couldn't be bothered to be with us or even say our kids' names, just as you had done for the last 3 years.
Vice President Harris, I ask you, why won't you return a call and explain to us how you call my daughter-in-law's death a success? President Trump has called. President Trump shows up. President Trump takes the time to hear our loved ones' stories.
We invited.
So that is just a portion of a video montage of those aforementioned Gold Star families lampooning the Biden-Harris administration over their botched pullout from Afghanistan, a decision and an operation which back then Kamala Harris took a lot of credit for, at least in her decision-making capacity, whatever that is. So that is the story coming out of the weekend, is that the Democrat media industrial complex tried to perpetrate and conjure another controversy, another Trump scandal, just conjure it out of thin air, taking photographs at Arlington National Cemetery. They tried to conjure this going into the Labor Day weekend, and it absolutely blew up in their face. Another abject failure in foreign policy over the weekend, an Israeli-American family that became an international symbol in the struggle to free hostages from Hamas captivity in Gaza laid their son to rest on Monday, after the discovery of his body and those of 5 others brought a fresh outpouring of grief. Tens of thousands of people thronged a Jerusalem cemetery to pay their respects to Hersh Goldberg Poland, who became one of the most recognizable faces of the nearly year-old hostage crisis. Hundreds of others lined a major thoroughfare in Jerusalem holding Israeli flags. Many sobbed as his mother, Rachel Goldberg Poland, said goodbye to her son and told him, quote, "My sweet boy, finally, you are free." She and her husband, John, shared stories of their 23-year-old son, who they called funny, curious, and relentless in the pursuit of justice. They said they hoped his death would be a turning point in the drawn-out negotiations for a ceasefire and hostage release. Again, this was an American citizen that we're talking about. An American citizen who is one of 5 other hostages, 6 in total, who were slaughtered by Hamas recently, and their bodies were recently discovered. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reacted to the sad news over the weekend as well.
Secretary Blinken said, Israel accepted the U.S. proposal. Now Hamas must do the same. On August 28th, that's 5 days ago, Deputy CIA Director said that Israel shows seriousness in the negotiations. Now Hamas must show the same seriousness. I want to ask you something. What has changed in the last 5 days? What has changed? One thing. These murderers executed 6 of our hostages. They shot them in the back of the head. That's what's changed. And now after this, we're asked to show seriousness? We're asked to make concessions? What message does this send Hamas?
That is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel reacting to the murders of 6 more hostages taken by Hamas on the October 7th raid of last year. Joe Biden was on the beach over the weekend on the better part of a 3-week-long vacation. He spent 40.3% of his presidency on vacation. Late last week, this story developed and then undeveloped rather quickly. Donald Trump is being pressed about how he's going to vote on Florida's Amendment 4, which determines basically if it's passed, if 60% or more of the vote says yes to Amendment 4 in Florida, That'll basically allow baby killing up until the moment of birth. NBC asked Trump on Thursday of last week how he plans to vote.
You overturn,
everyone does.
I think Roe, does, yeah. And you want abortion to be a states' rights issue. In Florida, the state that you are a resident of, there's an abortion-related amendment on the ballot to overturn the 6-week ban in Florida. How are you going to vote on that?
Well, I think the 6 week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
So you'll vote in favor of the amendment?
I am going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks.
So that clip makes it sound like Donald Trump is going to be voting yes on Amendment 4 in Florida. Over the weekend, though, actually on Friday, Trump clarified to Fox News saying,
voting yes or no on Amendment 4 in Florida.
So I think 6 weeks, you need more time than 6 weeks. I've disagreed with that right from the early primaries. When I heard about it, I disagreed with it. At the same time, the Democrats are radical because the 9 months is just a ridiculous situation where you can do an abortion in the 9th month. And, you know, some of the states like Minnesota and other states have it where you could actually execute the baby after birth. And all of that stuff is unacceptable. So I'll be voting no for that reason.
So that is unmistakably a wonderful development that Donald Trump will be voting no on Amendment 4 in Florida. Again, not the perfect statement, but that is a lot better than the nominee from the Republican Party saying that he's going to actually support just a heinous amendment in Florida. That is good news and good on Donald Trump that he eventually came to the right conclusion after a lot of pressure. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz sat down for their first interview, really only interview with CNN late last week, and Tim Walz was asked about his repeated stolen valor.
And the idea that you said that you were in war. Yeah. Did you misspeak as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar's not always correct. But again...
Yeah, my grammar's not always correct. That is Tim Walz's defense of his claims of stolen valor. Elsewhere in that interview, Kamala Harris says she no longer wants to ban fracking. That's the latest policy flip-flop that she's took that mirrors Donald Trump. She also asked and answered this question.
You have been vice president for 3.5 years. Yeah. The steps that you're talking about now, why haven't you done them already?
Well, first of all, we had to recover as an economy, and we have done that. I'm very proud of the work that we have done that has brought inflation down to less than 3%.
Yeah, inflation down to less than 3%. That's a level higher than it was during President Trump's administration. That's a yikes. The rest of the interview was just a lot of steaming piles of garbage and word salad, as you would come to expect from Kamala Harris. International news, a Brazilian Supreme Court justice ordered the X social media platform banned in the South American country. The company responded by accusing him of political corruption. On Thursday, Justice Alexandra de Moraes warned Elon Musk, the owner of the platform, that it could be banned if he refused to name a legal representative in the country and followed through on his threat on Friday. The decision was the latest in a months-long battle between Musk's companies and the judge. The company said in a statement on its global government affairs page on Thursday, it's being punished for refusing to comply with the judge's, quote, illegal orders to censor his political opponents. The statement said the judge threatened X's representative with imprisonment, and when she resigned, he went on to freeze her bank accounts. Defenders of the judge say the orders are legal and necessary at a time when the country's stability is threatened. The judge has also shut down financial transactions for Starlink, the internet satellite company owned by Musk, in an attempt to force X to comply with his orders. Starlink said in a statement on Thursday, quote, "This order is based on an unfounded determination that Starlink should be responsible for the fines levied unconstitutionally against X. It was issued in secret and without affording Starlink any of the due process of law guaranteed by the Constitution of Brazil. We intend to address the matter legally." Musk has previously likened de Moraes to a Harry Potter villain named Voldemort and cast the legal provocation as a battle about free speech. The wife of Kansas City Chiefs superstar quarterback Patrick Mahomes, that would be Brittany Mahomes, caught a lot of flack a couple of weeks ago after she liked a post that championed the party platform of Donald Trump and his priorities for his next administration. She liked that post on Instagram, which basically says she thinks those ideas are good. She got lampooned for that because there are losers who have the time to actually troll through celebrities' feeds and see what they're actually liking, not liking, and things of that nature. She got lampooned about that. She didn't back down, though. She didn't apologize or anything. She made a veiled comment later. And then on this podcast, the Whoop podcast, she addressed the situation further.
I think the main thing that, he always told me is, stop caring about what people think, especially the people that don't even know you. And so I think social media used to get to me a lot, and now it's just honestly, I don't give a F-U-C-K what people have to say about me anymore. And I think he's helped me get to that point to where, I'm strong in who I am. I'm confident in who I am. I'm confident in mine and his relationship, and I'm confident in our life. So why does, what other people say have to matter?
So that is Brittany Mahomes, wife of Kansas City Chiefs superstar Patrick Mahomes, just days after she faced criticism online, a firestorm for liking the platform of Donald Trump and what he has planned for a second administration. So to that end, we are now past Labor Day. We are in the thick of what could be the last meaningful election in this country. And I really do believe that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are both unabashed, raging communists. So here's my Labor Day commentary, at least in brief, on where I see the election right now. I started off this year saying I wanted to make sure that I don't succumb to the darkness. I don't want to just get comfortable with being negative Nelly all the time. Now, that's really hard to do when you cover the news. There's always a lot of bad news, and part of that, we try to get rid of that bad news on No Sucks Saturday, and we'll do that again this Saturday as well. But it's really tough to have any sort of optimism about our current state of affairs in this country when it comes to covering the news day in and day out. Part of that is me. Part of it, I think I'm a little bit allergic to optimism. But part of it is that it's just legitimately hard to find. So I want that as the pretext to what I'm about to say. If polls are to be believed, Kamala Harris didn't even get a bump after her orgasmic Democrat National Convention, where she accepted the nomination. No polling bounce at all. In fact, it's actually stagnated or, in some cases, disappeared after the DNC. Now, you might say that and think, well, Gallup had a poll last week that said Democrats' enthusiasm is at 2008 levels. How do you square those two things? And my initial instinct is to say that I think polls are actually underestimating Kamala Harris's support. However, she's going to be campaigning in New Hampshire this week. All out of nowhere, she and Tim Walz sat down for a joint interview on CNN. They tried to manufacture a story about Donald Trump wanting to change the debate rules, which is a lie. They're trying to manufacture any narrative whatsoever to get her out of that debate. They tried to manufacture a story over the weekend, over the Labor Day weekend that I told you about earlier, about Donald Trump disrespecting veterans and Gold Star families that blew up in their face. Now she's campaigning in New Hampshire. They also have fundraising events planned in Virginia and Minnesota. Those are not the activities, those are not the moves of a campaign that is at all confident in this election. Now, it could be nothing. Of course, Governor Walz is the governor of Minnesota. That could be something. That could be nothing. But Virginia, doing a fundraiser in Virginia, and campaigning in New Hampshire, I don't know. I'm not optimistic still necessarily about this election, but the Trump campaign after the Democrat National Convention has been a campaign. It's been good. Okay, other than the little snafu, and it is a little snafu now, with the Amendment 4 thing in Florida, which they ironed out, and they did it as well as you could expect Donald Trump to do so, and he came down on the right side, and I'm thankful for that. Other than that little flap, it's been a pretty good campaign post-DNC. Polling is looking really good. At least the public polls are looking really good for Donald Trump. And now you have, all of a sudden, an interview, a joint interview on CNN. All of a sudden, you have trying to manufacture stories about the debate. All of a sudden, you have a manufactured story about Arlington National Cemetery and Donald Trump. All of a sudden, you're starting to campaign in New Hampshire and do fundraising events in Minnesota and Virginia. Those are the same states that was rumored to be back on the map towards the end of Joe Biden's, well, for lack of better terms, presidency. Those are just not the kinds of stories that you would see coming out of a campaign that is confident where it is. So I'm just going to leave that there. I've said before that I think the election is going to come down to Wisconsin. Conventional wisdom says it's Pennsylvania. I still do believe that it's still Wisconsin. But if the actions of the Kamala Harris campaign are any indication, it might not need to come down to Wisconsin. I'm just going to leave it there. That'll do it for this Tuesday. We'll be back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.